think I'm gonna have to take that. I think the my iPad started ringing, but maybe I'll stop. Okay, Salãmun Alaykum everyone. Welcome to another Quran study. God willing, we will be reading from Surah 2, verse 259. Let's all seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. Okay, you guys can probably hear that. I think I have to turn off my iPad, sorry. Be right back. Sorry about that. Okay, Surah 2, verse 259. Lesson about death. Consider the one who passed by a ghost town and wondered, how can God revive this after it had died? God then put him to death for 100 years, then resurrected him. He said, how long have you stayed here? He said, I have been here a day or part of the day. He said, no, you have been here 100 years. Yet look at your food and drink. They did not spoil. Look at your donkey. We thus render you a lesson for the people. Now note how we construct the bones, then cover them with flesh. When he realized what had happened, he said, now I know that God is omnipotent. And the footnote says, the lesson we learn here is that the period of death, only the unrighteous die. The righteous go straight to heaven, passes like one day. See 19 through 25 in Appendix 17. So this example is, one where, we're being told about death, and even though this person was dead for 100 years, he didn't even realize how the 100 years had passed. And then God resurrected him, to let him guess how many years he had been staying. And his donkey and his food was there, and the food and the drink did not spoil, and apparently, I believe, his donkey was, completely gone. And then God reconstructed him and covered the bones with flesh to show him how God resurrects the people. Every believer needs assurance. Abraham said, my Lord, show me how you revive the dead. He said, do you not believe? He said, yes, but I wish to reassure my heart. He said, take 4 birds, study their marks, place a piece of each bird on top of a hill, then call them to you. They will come to you in a hurry. You should know that God is Almighty, most wise. So as we can see in the subtitle, it says every believer needs assurance. And so Abraham, being the submitter who was never an idol worshiper and was a convinced believer, also asked God for assurance. And God assured him by showing him this miracle with, how he revives the dead. He said, I wish to reassure my heart, right? And God allowed him to have 4 birds and place a piece of each bird on top of a hill. And they all, and all of a sudden, when he called the birds, they came back together, and, right away. Because obviously, we understand from this that God is omnipotent. And so for him to do anything, it's not impossible. God can do anything. And so in these 2 examples, we were shown how God revives the dead, right? And it's almost like you and I have just seen it in front of our eyes as I read them, because we have the Quran's physical mathematical proof that shows to us that this actually happened, right? And this is quite amazing that for God, uh, it sounds really amazing, but for God it's very easy, because for God to have anything done, He simply says to it be, and it is. So this is just obviously important for the having the belief in the hereafter, for resurrection. Most people don't believe that they will be resurrected, and for them, this idea that things can come back together, seems like a physical impossibility. But we know that for God, nothing is impossible, and for God to have anything done, He simply says to it be, and it is. And so, we have to think about that, the whole process, and that we're going to be resurrected. It's an assurance for our hearts, and with that assurance, we have to put our lives and our priorities in the correct perspective. Look at it in the correct light, so that we're not worried about this world and its vanities, but we're actually focused on our hereafter, and that is our goal, because we understand that we will be brought back to life on the day of resurrection. The day of resurrection is going to happen. It's a physical fact, as God says, and we will all be resurrected, because that's where most people fall short, and they become hypocrites or disbelievers or idol worshippers, because they don't believe in the day of resurrection. Many people say obviously they do with lip service, but their hearts don't believe, which is what causes them to stray. So the subtitle says for 261, the best investment. The example of those who spend their monies in the cause of God is that of a grain that produces 7 spikes, with 100 grains in each spike. God multiplies this manifold for whomever He wills. God is bounteous. Nor. Those who spend their money in the cause of God, then do not follow their charity with insult or harm, will receive their recompense from their Lord. They have nothing to fear, nor shall they grieve. Kind words and compassion are better than a charity that is followed by insult. God is rich, clement. O you who believe, do not nullify your charities by inflicting reproach and insult, like one who spends his money to show off, while disbelieving in God in the last day. His example is like a rock covered with a thin layer of soil. As soon as heavy rain falls, it washes off the soil, leaving it a useless rock. They gain nothing from their efforts. God does not guide disbelieving people. Charity. The example of those who give their money seeking God's pleasure out of sincere conviction is that of a garden on high fertile soil. When heavy rain falls, it gives twice as much crop. If heavy rain is not available, a drizzle will suffice. God is seer of everything you do. Does any of you wish to own a garden of date palms and grapes, with flowing streams and generous crops? Then just as he grows old, and while his children are still dependent on him, a holocaust strikes and burns up his garden? God thus clarifies the revelations for you, that you may reflect. So these examples are talking about spending money in the cause of God and giving to charity. And of course, when you give to charity also, you are spending in the cause of God, because it's for God, because you're doing it for your hereafter. You're doing it because God tells you. It doesn't necessarily have to be something directly related to like spreading the message or something, right? And so that's why we have the example of not following your charity by reproach or insult, or any kind of harm. Um, so God calls, spending in the cause of God as the best investment, right? And the reason why it's the best investment is because, the reward that you receive on top of that, in return for your investment, for your hereafter, is many times over. And, God multiplies it many times over. The return on your investment, right, is a lot higher than anything in this world. And if you think about it, this worldly life is nothing. This worldly life is nil compared to hereafter. So, it's you can't even you can't even, like, create a mathematical figure to show how much you're gonna get out of it. But God still gives us example uh, of people who spend their monies in the cause of God. It just keeps multiplying, right? It says, is that of a grain that produces 7 spikes with 100 grains in each spike. Now, some people, I know some people that actually use that and say, oh, well, that means that if you spend something, it's going to be multiplied, 7 times 100, 700 times. But that's not it, because, the grains that you uh, produce, I mean, the grains that you invest will have 7 spikes. Invest in will have 7 spikes with 100 grains in each spike. But then what happens to the 100 grains? You know, it also multiplies, right? They keep multiplying. It's a never ending thing. So it doesn't end, right? So anything you spend, the rewards are incomprehensible what you're going to get in return with God. Of course, I mean, how can you explain spending $20 uh, on charity? I mean, how will you explain how you're going to get the return in the hereafter? I mean, we cannot put a monetary value for even a day of a higher rank that we will receive for just that one act, right? So this is, I mean, obviously, the best deal, God says, right? I mean, spending in the cause of God for a hereafter. And God says He multiplies us manifold, right? And so He's just given an example of grains and spikes, which is like so many. And obviously, but it doesn't end there. Obviously, I mean, if you have a grain, I mean, you can have a whole crop with it, right? And so that's the beauty of spending in the cause of God, and that's the beauty of spending on your hereafter. Most people in this world, they ignore their hereafter. They don't give to charity. And the people who do give to charity, we know that they're not doing it for God. They're doing it for their own satisfaction, for their ego, for showing off. And usually, obviously, I mean, for your charities to be accepted, they have to be done sincerely, for God. And a lot of people, as we can see here, will give to charity, and then they will follow their charities with insult or harm. And it's quite amazing how that happens, But I believe uh, some people, when they give someone charity, they feel that they own that person because they have put the money in this person, and this person has to live up to their expectations and their requirements, and how the money's spent, and how they live, and what they should do. Or they just give the money and then look down on a person, and like their servant, like just like you have an employee and you're paying them salary. And so in the same manner, like, the fact that you're giving them money, they feel like they have the upper hand on you in some way. And it doesn't necessarily have to be money as a charity. Sometimes people will do someone a favor. I mean, that's also a charity, right? You could ask money for it, but you do it as a charity. You could help someone by doing something for them, right? But then right after they do that, they nullify their effort by saying something insulting to the person. And God says, kind words and compassion are better. Sometimes people will give money and then obviously they're giving it for show off or whatever, and then obviously they have feelings of regret that they give money, and so they take it out on the person. I mean, we the thing is that basically Satan is behind it, right? And obviously, if your heart is in the right place, when you give to charity, you should feel closer to God. Your heart should be humble, and your soul should be stronger. To not do anything like that to the other person, especially you're talking about hurting a person's feeling and his dignity and his self-esteem when you do that, right? Being on the receiving end when you need charity obviously is a very tough situation to be in, and I think nobody chooses to put themselves in a position where they need charity, and they put themselves in a very vulnerable position when they are the ones who are at the receiving end of taking charity. And so it's very important that we are very careful and we don't fall the charity by insult. I mean, I've certainly seen many cases where I've seen submitters do that, right? And I was so shocked because I knew that God says in the Quran that people are not supposed to do that. But people will do that. Obviously, if they're not careful, Satan will make them do that because there are people who are not giving to charity for the right reasons. And they're exposed by this fact. And also, God allows those charities to be nullified. Now, obviously, Satan is the one behind it, right? He makes people do that. So people have to be really careful. I mean, and it becomes a real test too, especially if the person you're giving to charity has, other problems like drug abuse or, psychological issues. And those things are also pretty hard to deal with. So, people, obviously, people who are in that position may be going through a lot of other things, who knows, right? So, but nevertheless, we have to be careful. And God says, kind words and compassion are better than a charity that is followed by insult. And God gives us the example of a rock, with a thin layer of soil. And what happens, once, a little bit of rain falls on it, it's wiped out completely clean. It's like there's no soil on it. And that's the example of the charity. It goes to waste. But then God gives example of a high fertile ground. Those are the charities that are not followed by insult. And when a little bit of rain falls on it, I mean, that's your charity, the high fertile ground. Is you benefiting from your charities. Like your charity being the rain, the water. So obviously, that is put to good use. And God says, do you wish to own a garden of palm trees and grapes with flowing streams and generous crops? Then just as he grows old and while his children are still dependent on him, a holocaust strikes and burns up his garden. And so that's the example of the charities. Just when you have done this wonderful work, right? And just when it gets to the time that you actually need it, it's gone because you have young children and they're dependent, and all of a sudden everything's gone, right? And that's your example. If you give to charity and then you follow it by insult, and all of a sudden there's nothing, and you're really needy at that time, but there's nothing, and obviously then your children naturally will starve and stuff. So verse 267's subtitle says, what to give. O you who believe, you shall give to charity from the good things you earn, and from what we have produced for you from the earth. Do not pick out the bad therein to give away, when you yourselves do not accept it, unless your eyes are closed. You should know that God is rich, praiseworthy. The devil promises you poverty and commands you to commit evil, while God promises you forgiveness from him and grace. God is bounteous, omniscient. So these two verses, I mean, mashallah, they're very enlightening because, God is teaching us what to give. When people give to charity, a lot of times they give things that they don't care for, usually things that they don't want. I mean, so God says, do not pick out the bad therein to give away, when you yourselves will not accept it unless your eyes are closed. And I don't want to say most people, but in my experience, I've seen most people actually will give the worst things that they have no care for. Things that are used, things that they don't need, things that are old. Like like junk cars, and obsolete, you know, stuff like, I hate to bring this up, but I remember this one time where I saw someone give a really old beat up car that was like maybe that was just ready to go to a junkyard, right? And a computer that was so old you could barely run anything on it, and they wanted to give that to charity to someone, and but they were really well off, and pretty it wasn't like they were poor or anything. They owned a company and were extremely well off. And so we to me that's something to learn from, is that we should not be like such people, because uh, one, we shouldn't follow charity by insult, but also if you're given to charity, give things that you would want for yourself, the good things that you'd want for your own children, for example, right? Give those types of things to charity. If you're going to give if you're going to give things other than money, give the nice things that you would want for yourself, like give them, and give them cheerfully, give them as a gift to people. When someone has a birthday or a wedding or something like that, people go and buy the best gift, they wrap it in fancy paper and everything, just so they can look good, right? But when they're giving to charity, obviously none of that is there, and for a lot of people, and but we have to use our mind and see what God is saying in the Quran. If you're doing something for God, for your charity to be accepted, you should go and pick the nice things, right? It's not a loss. It's an investment for your future, and you should think like that. Obviously, don't go and just pick the junk that you can just call someone who hauls junk, and just instead of giving that to a junk service, you go and give it to someone in the name of charity, and then feel good about it and pat yourself on the back that you gave so much to charity. So we shouldn't be like that. Because God says the devil promises you poverty and commands you to commit evil. But while God promises you forgiveness from him and grace, God is bounteous, omniscient. So remember that. God is bounteous and he's omniscient. Well, the devil does want to promise you poverty, and he promises you to commit evil. And obviously, giving the bad things to people, obviously when you give it to someone and they're not blind too, they're gonna feel terrible that you're just giving them the worst things, and they see you wearing the nice clothes, and you give them clothes with holes in it or whatever, right? And just to give a perspective to what I'm saying, right? So we should be careful, but obviously you have to use your best judgment, because at the same time, the devil will try to push people to extremes. Either you have this um, extreme, but then you could have the other extreme where someone will go above and beyond and overextend themselves, and then feel sorry later, and they spend more than what they can afford. Obviously, it has to be within reason. Like, for example, when you give someone a gift for a birthday or anything, you don't just empty your entire bank account. I mean, obviously you leave money for yourself, and so it should be kind of in the same fashion when you help people. I mean, you can only help to give a certain amount, but obviously don't pick the worst. But give the good things, but obviously you still have to be moderate, and you can be extravagant, right? So you have to use your best judgment when you give to charity as well. Wisdom, a great treasure, 269. He bestows wisdom upon whomever he chooses, and whoever attains wisdom has attained a great bounty. Only those who possess intelligence will take heed. Anonymous charity better. Any charity you give or a charitable pledge you fulfill, God is fully aware thereof. As for the wicked, they will have no helpers. If you declare your charities, they are still good. But if you keep them anonymous and give them to the poor, it is better for you and remits more of your sins. God is fully cognizant of everything you do. So this is very important, and the subtitle says anonymous charity is better. And so it's better because if you can give your charity without letting the entire world know, that is from you, you get more credit for it, So don't go boasting about your charities. And if you're giving charity to someone, if there is a way that you can keep your identity anonymous, so that the person you're giving charity to does not even know who it's from, right? So that kind of charity is better. Giving to charity, if you declare your charity, obviously God says it's still good, but it goes, a long way if, you're keeping yourself anonymous, and God says it wipes more of your sins, so you get more credit, right? And so we want to earn the maximum credit for our works, and so we have to make sure that we try to do it in a way that, we do it anonymously, right? So that's definitely harder. It has, obviously, it may be a little bit difficult, but you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? Is it worth it if you can keep your identity concealed? God says it's better, right? So we should try to, keep it anonymous. That's always, encouraged. And God says is better for you and remits more of your sins. God is the only one who guides. 272, you're not responsible for guiding anyone. God is the only one who guides whoever chooses to be guided. Any charity you give is for your own good. Any charity you give shall be for the sake of God. Any charity you give will be repaid to you without the least injustice. Charity shall go to the poor who are suffering in the cause of God and cannot immigrate. The unaware may think that they are rich due to their dignity, but you can recognize them by certain signs. They never beg from the people persistently. Whatever charity you give, God is fully aware thereof. Those who give to charity night and day, secretly and publicly, receive their recompense from their Lord. They will have nothing to fear, nor will they grieve. So God says that He's the only one who guides. God says you cannot guide the ones you love. God is the only one who guides whoever chooses to be guided, and we're not responsible for guiding anyone either. We can just pass the message to people, but we're not responsible for guiding them. Obviously, if they choose to be guided, God will guide them, and it's good for them. And so, also, when we give to charity, God says the charity that we're giving, is for our own good. And any charity that we're doing it's for the sake of God, right? So any charity that you give will be repaid to you without the least injustice. So remember that when you give to charity. You're doing it for God, you're doing it for yourself. So don't think that if you give to someone to charity, if you give charity to someone that you're doing it to help them, you're doing it to help yourself. And so if at the end of the day the person doesn't end up taking heed or whatnot, it doesn't matter. The same goes for someone, you give to charity and they end up doing something with that money that is not right. So they are responsible for that, right? And you're not responsible for that, and the charity you're giving will still be counted for you because it's for your own soul. It's not for the other person. And God says, charity shall go to the poor who are suffering in the cause of God and cannot immigrate. So there's many people who could be suffering in the cause of God, and they really need the money so they could immigrate. Now immigrating in the cause of God also is going to be difficult for people, right? It needs a lot of resources to be able to do that. And so a lot of people cannot do that just for that reason. And God says, you may think they're rich due to their dignity. They don't persistently beg from the people, but you can see certain signs. You might notice, their clothes, or you might notice some other signs, like it could be any kind of signs that you will know by those signs that the person doesn't have money. So you should help such people. And God says, those who give to charity secretly and publicly receive their recompense from their Lord. They will have nothing to fear, nor will they grieve. And so, secretly and publicly, right? If you give publicly to charity, it still doesn't nullify your charities, right? And but if you're doing it with insult, then that nullifies the charity. Obviously, if you're doing it for show off, that's another thing, right? But just because you make your charity known doesn't make it bad, obviously. 275, usury prohibited. Those who charge usury are in the same position as those controlled by the devil's influence. This is because they claim that usury is the same as commerce. However, God permits commerce and prohibits usury. Thus, whoever heeds this commandment from his Lord and refrains from usury, he may keep his past earnings, and his judgment rests with God. As for those who persist in usury, they incur hell, wherein they abide forever. God condemns usury and blesses charities. God dislikes every disbeliever guilty. And the footnote says, it is an established economic principle that excessive interest on loans can utterly destroy a whole country. During the last few years, we have witnessed the devastation of the economies of many nations where excessive interest is charged. Normal interest less than 20%, where no one is victimized and everyone is satisfied, is not usury. And so this is also a very important piece of information. Most people don't know this, and they think that when the Quran talks about usury, it's talking about the entire banking system and any kind of loan, but that's not true. Usury, by definition, is excessive interest. So charging excessive interest, and so then here we're given a ballpark of like less than 20%. So anything less than 20% is not excessive, and so, basically it allows people to get a loan. At the same time, it acts as an investment for people that are giving the loan, and so, you're just paying them for their investment, and so in that case it becomes a trade. But excessive interest is not the same, right? Excessive interest, you're victimizing the person, and if you look at it at a larger scale, it causes devastation. As the footnote says, the economies where interest rates are high, causes a lot of issues. And we're seeing that now also. We're seeing banks go out of business, businesses going bankrupt, and so many other things happening because of it. I mean, a lot of times, people will do it to balance off other things, but for a lot of other people, and it's a way to victimize and capitalize on other people's situations, and out of greed. And so that's why God prohibits it. I mean, obviously, we shouldn't be greedy, and we should try to help people. And even charity is better than charging usury, and giving someone a loan out, and expecting a whole lot in return. More than a lot more than what's fair. And but if you give a large amount of money to someone as a loan, and you charge interest on it, I mean, it's completely okay. They can do business with it, and other things, and they can return you the loan, and the promised amount of time, and pay that interest on it, right? But if you charge too much interest and you victimize a person, obviously the person's not going to be able to even stand on their 2 feet. And we see examples of that throughout the world. There are people who charge a lot of interest, essentially usury, and they prey on people who with bad financial situations. We can see there are many companies that are, for example, here in the U.S. You'll see too, that will prey on people who have bad credit, and they give them really, really high interest rates. Credit card with really, really high interest rates, or the quick loans sometimes, that have like really high interest rates. Now, it's important to remember that, if you're in a situation where you need money and that's the only way you're going to be able to get it, for whatever reason, I mean, it's okay for you to take it. But for someone to charge usury on the receipt, on the giving end, who the one who's giving the loan, they can't charge usury. But if you're put in a situation where you have to take a loan, and the only options available for you are the really excessive interest rates, even higher than 20%, it's okay. So, but for the people that are taking it, God prohibits it. But at the same time, God is still merciful to people who have been, taking usury in the past. That God says they can keep their past earnings, as long as they're heeding this commandment. They can keep their past earnings, but they don't persist in continuing with it, right? And they can repent and reform, and they can still keep their past earnings. You don't have to give it away, obviously, and that is also a mercy from God. And God says He condemns usury and He blesses charities. So it's better that you give to charity. Also, it's important. We have another verse in the Quran where God says, when a debtor is unable to pay, you should wait for a better time, right? And if debtor is still unable to pay, you can forgive the loan as a charity. So if you really want credit with God, that's the best return on investment, is to give to charity, right, instead of giving someone a loan. And so these are God's commandments for us. Obviously, this is involving money, and people love money so much. And God says we cannot attain righteousness until we give for the things we love. And and obviously, when you invest into something, you're invested into something. I mean, it will drive you closer to belief, right? And you will be invested in your hereafter by putting money into it. So you will it will bring you closer to believing in the hereafter when you're investing for your hereafter, because you're spending all this money. It reminds you that why you're spending this so that you can get a return in your post retirement account, right? Which is after you retire from this world, you'll have an account that is going to be never ending. And obviously, but we have to have the right intentions for spending. It shouldn't be to show off or for any other reason other than for the cause of God. So with this, God willing, I'll end. If you guys have any comments or questions, please feel free. Thank you.
MashaAllah, brother.
Thank you.
MashaAllah, brother. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you too.
MashaAllah. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, we just talking about the character. This is a common trend. I see on YouTube or social media people, putting their cell phones in the face of homeless people.
Brother John, we can barely hear you. Can you come closer to the microphone? Oh, you got disconnected.
Better. Can you hear me better?
Yes, yeah, yes.
Yeah, I was hooked to the vehicle speaker. That's why. Yeah, mashallah, it reminded me, talking about the charity and nullifying it. There's like in the last 5 years, I've seen this. I'm sure y'all have seen it too. This common trend of people on social media and YouTube doing all these, wonderful things for homeless people, but they have to get it on film, and you get the notion that they're doing it, not really to help the person, but more to get recognition from the people. So many views on YouTube, and they make money off of that. But it's and people are catching on to, it's just a comment that just reminded me.
Mashallah. Yeah, it's a very good point.
So I have a question regarding being anonymous while doing charity. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So there are these organizations, they're very well known, and they're like international organizations, and they so there is this idea of the sponsorship, and when somebody sponsors somebody who's in need, like a child, and then you see that like they take photos of the child and send it to the sponsor, and they try to keep the contact between the sponsor and the child. And to me that's kind of insulting, because you need to leave them alone. Like, if you're helping them, there's no point in keeping so much contact between the sponsor and the child. But at the same time, there is this idea of being kind, like to an orphan, and so I'm confused. I don't know if what they are doing is good, or if the sponsor should continue the correspondence, or should stop the correspondence with the child. I mean, if you can help me about that, would be great. Inshallah.
Yeah, I mean, it's better that you give to people that you know first, and if you don't have anybody to give to charity in your own circle, in your own like outer circle, then you can go to these organizations. I'm sure there's people, plenty of people, around you or in your family, and your relatives that are also, especially orphans. God talks about orphans who are related, right? So you may have orphans in your family versus, these organizations. You don't even know how much of the money that you're paying is actually going to these orphans, right? I mean, even though God allows people who are taking the charity to take some of the charity, but that's not what a lot of organizations are doing, and we don't know how much of your money is actually being spent on those needy people. But if it was me, I mean, I would try to find people within my family and around me, that actually need charity. Yeah.
But what they are doing is it could be considered kind of, I mean, to my understanding, is could be insulting because you're giving, like, you're helping as an organization, you're helping a community, but then taking photos of them, and that could be like to prove that you're doing the charity. Like to me, that could be a little bit problematic. I don't know.
I mean, insulting in what way? Because people know they're being helped.
Oh, okay. So they're kind of advertising, hoping that they will get more help from people.
Right. I know. I'm just trying to understand what's the insulting part by the photos is.
You have a child, like a 5-year-old, you take a photo of them and send it to the sponsor. I was just wondering whether that could be insulting to the child. Like the child is wondering why they taking photos of me, like
I mean, if the
frequently.
child, if the child doesn't want their photo taken, I mean, that's another thing. But usually these people, I mean, don't even mind having their photos taken. But I mean, when God talks about insult, people really insult the people they're giving charity to, either for the sake of them being in that position. They blame the person who is in
Okay.
need, you know, and they insult them by, like, a lot of times, you'll see people someone is begging, right? Let's say,
Right.
and people go up to them and say, "Hey, why don't you work?" and this and that, and like, first they'll give them some charity, right? And then they say, "Oh, thank you," or something, and then they'll be like, "Oh, well, why don't you work? Go find yourself a job," or
No.
this and that, and it's like, you think that they're just doing it out of choice, right? And these types of ways, like, people actually insult people who ask for money or who are in a needy situation. They think that they're stupid or they are lazy,
I see.
and things
Okay.
like that, and so they really insult people, and a lot of times they will try to be controlling and bossy with people they're helping, especially if they know those people. And so we have to be extremely careful in that, right? I mean, people
Yeah.
actually, I've seen people, even submitters, insult people that they give charities to, and that's not righteous. Obviously, those people nullify their charities.
Yes, obviously. Yes. Thank you so much. Yes, mashallah. So I can like have now. I should have good thoughts about a specific organization. They try to keep the correspondence. They try to keep the sponsors informed that this child is being taken care of.
Yeah.
So that's the good
Yeah, and I
correspondence.
mean, if you don't want that, I mean, you can let them know that I don't want that. I prefer to just not let them know that I'm giving them charity, or knowing who I'm giving charity to. But a lot of times, people like to see that the money they're spending, is being put to good use, and this is why some organizations will have this practice where they keep where they tell other people, how their money is being spent. So I mean, I guess a lot of it is transparency also, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, mashallah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
MashaAllah. If you have someone close to you that's, or like you're not supposed to give charity to hypocrites, right? Even if they're kind of really bad off, or
Yeah, I mean, if someone declares their disbelief, then you shouldn't help them, right?
MashaAllah.
Mashallah, that's a really good question. Because I've had that same thought. Like when it comes to zakat charity, then you're supposed to give your parents, but they declare their full disbelief in worshiping God and God alone. I had that question: do you still give your charity?
Yeah, actually, there is an audio with the Messenger of the Covenant where people have asked him the same question, and he responded by saying that you should run from them. So
MashaAllah, brother. Brother, I have a question. So for the basically the subtitle of verses 275 to 278 that we read today, we have actually. I think if I share my screen, that will be better. Just give me one moment, since I just want to bring up the verses. Sorry. Okay. Can you see my screen? Yeah. Okay. All right. So we have so here we have for the basically I bring the page. For the subtitle, we have it is an established economic principle that excessive interest on loans can utterly destroy a whole country. During the last few years, we have witnessed the devastation of the economies of many nations where excessive interest is charged. Normal interest, less than 20%, where no one is victimized and everyone is satisfied, is not usually. So, like for example, say that somebody owns a credit company or a bank for that matter, and then they give out loans and their actually interest is less than 20%. That's fine, correct?
yeah,
Is that okay? So this is clear, and then there is this actually verse in Surah 3, okay, that we have interest on bank deposits and interest charged on loans are lawful if they are not excessive 5 to 15%. So I don't understand. This one is also referring to loans, or is it just for the bank deposits? Can you clarify?
yeah. I mean, it's referring to the same thing, you know. So in one place, the messenger gives a ballpark 5 to 15%, and in the other one, he just says less than 20%. You know, so I mean, that's how it's found. You know, so I always take it as less than 20%. You know, whatever it is, whatever number it is. But 5 to 15%, like he gave like a range. You know, like it's acceptable, and in the other place he's saying less than 20%. So
Okay.
yeah. So it just gives you an idea, like what's acceptable, right? I mean, if it goes beyond that,
Beyond
yeah,
20%, yeah.
then it's wrong. Yeah. a lot of times, I mean, with the banks, you can see that, like the loans that the banks offer, right? I mean, they're usually like, for example, home loans, or like usually home loans, for example, right? The banks that give, or bank deposits. You can see on bank deposits, you get a fixed rate, right? Uh, so
So it means that, like, for example, if somebody is living in a country where they are giving more, more rates than on the bank deposits, they shouldn't take it, correct? It is like, for example, they give 30% interest
I
on
don't
the
think
bank
anybody would
deposits.
give 30%.
Well, yeah, in Iran they do that.
Oh, really? 30%?
Yeah, for long-term accounts, and sometimes they go up to 30% based on the amount of money, basically. Yeah, yeah,
But they
because
shouldn't take the deposit. They should leave the money
for
there,
long-term, correct?
like for a
Yeah.
year or more than a year. We never trust them. So the
Right.
thing is that
Yeah, probably you never get
the,
that money back.
no, I
Right.
mean 20% is the safe, and Masood and I were discussing this before, and we were under this impression that this the part that Masood is showing now is when you are putting money in the bank and you are getting some benefits. But the other one that we talked about is when the bank is giving you some loan and then they are charging some benefit. I mean, we made a distinction between these two, but I mean, forgive us, we don't know exactly. I mean, we think this one is for the banks. They are charging like 20%, so that when they give you a benefit, like there are people who invest their money in certain countries in the bank, and they get some benefit. And we were thinking that the other, footnote meant that they are allowed to ask for only 50%, 5 to 15%, and then the bank can charge like other people for loans like only 20%. So it's like distinction between people putting their money in the bank or a bank giving the loan.
Right. I think it's not that complicated. It's really interest versus usury. And
Okay.
he's just saying that interest more than this percentage is excessive, and that's usury. But within that range, it's not usury, it's fine, it's just interest. Excessive interest is only the interest that's prohibited.
More than 20% is excessive.
Yeah, 20% or more, if you want to reconcile these two statements, right? So I would conclude that more than 20%, 20% or more is excessive, right? It should be below, it should be up to 19%, right? Up to 19% is okay, right?
It shouldn't go. It
Yeah.
shouldn't go higher than 20. 20
No, it
should
says
be
less
less
than
than.
20.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Yes,
so it shouldn't
not
go
20, even
shouldn't
20. Yeah,
shouldn't go higher than 19%.
correct. Yeah, yep. MashaAllah. Also, there is actually this verse 60 of Surah 9. So there we have actually um, a sort of an order, maybe not an order, like a category of people who we can give charity toward. Okay, so here we have verse 60, distribution system for charities. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Charities shall go to the poor, the needy, the workers who collect them, the new converts, to free the slaves, to those burdened by sudden expenses in the cause of God, and to the traveling aliens. Such is God's commandment. God is omniscient, most wise. So this is not an order. This is more like a list of people, correct?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Because it doesn't even talk about the parents, for example, or the
Yes,
relatives.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Is this like a category of people who can receive the charity, or like people who need the charity?
Well, it's talking about the distribution system, right? So when there are distribution systems for charities, right? Like a charitable organization, for example, that you create. So it talks about the workers who collect the charity. That's why talking about
Okay.
the
So it's about
system.
a. Okay, so it's about like a company that is working for charity, correct?
It does. I mean, it could be a company. It doesn't have to be an established company, right? It could be just something you set up yourself. I mean, it doesn't have to be incorporated or, you know, when you say
Okay.
company. But
Yeah.
it's a, let's say you created a distribution system
Mm-hmm.
that's where charity is being taken, and people who are collecting the charity, can also take the charity to
Mm-hmm. Yes.
cover their operating expenses
Mm-hmm.
for that charity, and they can use that for new converts,
Okay.
to free the slaves, to people
To give
burdened
to the
by certain
poor.
expenses, etc. Obviously, and that's why this doesn't talk about relatives or parents or anything like that, right?
I see.
Yeah.
Because this is totally different from zakat. This is
Yes.
just like charity. Okay, got
Yeah.
it. Okay, interesting. Okay, mashallah.
Yeah, but it's interesting. It mentions new converts.
Yes, yes, new converts. Yeah, obviously new converts to submission.
Yeah, of course.
Mm.
Not the bearded
Not
converts.
yeah, not newly converts to Mormonism. You know.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Mashallah, I wanted to, read the verse 269 one more time. It's so beautiful. This verse is so, it shows one of the great blessings that God has bestowed upon the submitters, mashallah. Wisdom, a great treasure. He bestows wisdom upon whomever he chooses, and whomever attains wisdom has attained a great bounty. Only those who possess intelligence will take heed. And as submitters, we should always, there are some downtimes. Satan doesn't want to leave us alone, but this verse can make us really happy, on the spot, every second, because we always have God to seek refuge in, and He always, grants us the wisdom we need during any situation in our life as we are, trying to be righteous, inshallah. And He bestows it upon us, and we have a perspective on life. Submitters have a perspective on life that is very much different from like 99.99% of the people around us. They are trying to invest in their post-retirement account in this world, and they try really hard to achieve something that they might not even live to enjoy that retirement account, or they might not even be able to enjoy it because they might be sick, or they might spend the money on treatments. But praise be to God, submitters have been bestowed with the wisdom, with the ability to spend their time focusing on their post-retirement account for the hereafter, inshallah. And the good part, the part that makes it really enjoyable, is that you don't know how much you're going to get, but you have God's promise. And sometimes you just don't care what's going to actually happen in the hereafter, like how much you're going to receive, because you're already receiving it here. You're so happy, and you can see the difference between the way a submitter lives as opposed to a non-submitter. They're constantly worried. They are constantly listening to media and all the troubles in the world that we know Satan created. And but the submitters are so peaceful. They're so they trust their Lord, and they know that they're always provided as long as they follow the commandments and they give it to charity. So it's a type of wisdom that like a majority of the people in the world might know about it, but they don't want to submit to it. They don't want to accept it. They don't want to actually apply it in their lives. And we know that wanting that is what God puts in the submitter's heart. So if somebody wants to be charitable, it's actually a blessing, and God provides for them to be charitable. And so God is giving the submitters the money they need, giving them the ability to not be stingy and to give it to people, and at the same time is rewarding them in this world and in the hereafter, inshallah. So you see like how much support submitters have as opposed to non-submitters that are always like worried, and the devils are unleashed on them, and they are like having a miserable life. They have hell starts here for them, as opposed to a submitter which is always peaceful and wise, inshallah.
Yeah, I mean,
Salāmun Alaykum, everyone.
Assalamu
So
alaikum.
I want to make a comment about the usual.
Okay.
Go ahead, brother. Yeah, I introduced.
No, go ahead. It's okay. I was
You
just gonna
first,
say
brother. No
that.
problem.
I was just
Okay,
gonna
yeah.
say that
So
it's hard to find submitters like the ones Ishima's talking about, because it seems like submitters is a term that gets thrown around a lot these days, and even when you see a lot of the so-called submitters, I mean, they seem to be no different than so many other people. And so, yeah, obviously, if someone really submits to God, they will be peaceful and not be worried about the things of this world. And but I guess it's such a difficult thing that not everybody can be at that mindset unless they're really reverent of God, and they have their priorities set up correctly, and they have their heart in the right place.
yeah, mashallah, I agree, brother. Yeah, with you.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I want to make a comment about the usury. So mashallah, God is so much good, and Satan duped, the people so many years about the interest, yeah, so God sent the messenger, and this is a mercy for us, and he clear everything about the interest and the difference between the interest and the usury. So, and what I noticed, in my life, yeah, even though the traditional Muslims, they said that taking interest or paying interest is a haram, blah, 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 and so many things. But if you go their life, you see, analyze their life, most of the people, forget about the Hindu, the other people, the traditional Muslims, but they said it's haram, haram. But and most what the business owner, the banking, they are taking, they are using, they don't, they say, oh, interest is haram, but in their daily life, they are so much involved with it. Even I see in the USA that they are going to the mosque every time here and there, and they said the interest is haram, but when they are going to buy a house, home, and they don't care, and taking the money from the bank with the interest. So it's a kind of a hypocrisy. You believe that interest is haram because based on the hadith, but why you are going for the interest again? Why buying home by taking the loan because you believe that interest is haram? So it's a hypocrisy, in my sense. And based on this one, also I used to believe that one interest is haram, and how can you? When I came to USA and I got chance to buy a house, but I had to take the interest. So because of the interest, and I fear, because I used to believe that the hadith, you cannot take the interest, and
and take 12 interest. So that time I couldn't, I didn't try to buy the house because of I don't want to invest, I don't want to involved in the interest. Now, and mashallah, so now I am clear now. So even if you are going to buy a house or doing anything, it is a bit, it's below the certain level, Messenger of God explained. I think he explained like the 5 to 15% is a safer side, if nobody will be victimized. But if you go beyond after even the 15, but it should be below 19, 20, yeah. But 5 to 15%, I think my understanding, he mentioned what there is is a safer side, between the 5 to 15%, and nobody will be victimized. But if you go even the 16, 17, but it's still be should be below the 20%. And that's my understanding from his, the writing, from his footnotes. Yeah, and
Yep. All right. Are there any other comments or questions? I mean, there's also,
and another issue I want to say about the submitter. Say when you become a submitter,
hello?
Brother Nizam, you're muted.
Yeah, it's unmuted now. When you're a submitter, what? Okay.
I think we should guess the rest of the sentence.
I think it's about engagement.
Okay. Brother, we can't hear you. If you could log out and log back in, that would be great.
All right. Are there any other comments or questions from anybody else? Well, we wait. So I see a lot of people that are quiet today. Especially Huda, usually, is always commenting. She's very quiet, not saying anything. Just kidding. Well, Justin is here, Jafar is here, Brother Omid is here, Salami. All right.
Brother Nizam is back, but I don't know. Brother Nizam, we didn't hear what you were saying. If you could repeat what you said. Okay.
Yeah, he's asking about engagement.
Okay. Well, he's not even unmuting. Okay, so.
Yeah. I think he's shy. Okay.
Yeah, mashallah. I wanted to also say something. I noticed, like, within a family, extended family, following charity with harm. Something I've like when I hear that verse, I think of like I've heard it before, where people, they'll give money to somebody that needs it, and then they'll sit there and lecture them for like 10 minutes about, oh, you need to do better saving your money, or oh, you should do this, or you should do that, or oh, quit being so, used spending your money this way. I've heard that quite a few times, but yeah, that's a good example, because like you said, like God tells us to do, we're supposed to, not question, because I mean, we never know. We don't know the unseen and like what happened with this person, or so many situations and stuff,
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and we also have to remember that, when we come across a person who is in need, we are being tested on how we respond to this particular situation. It's not just about that person, like why the person is in that position. You're being tested how you respond to this situation also.
right, mashallah. And it's something I think I talked to you about it, and I heard. I like what you said today. So if we're giving a charity to somebody, within the family, and they're, God willing, they would take heed of the message, but we can charity to that person, because we're doing our part and doing it for God. So even if this person isn't taking heed, or maybe God willing in the future they're just having a really hard time, and because there was an instance where I got like sort of question. I was like, man, is there somebody else that I could, but then I just go back to the Quran with what God says, what the messenger constantly talked about in the Quran. It starts with in orders with the parents, so
Yeah.
and in that I like that, for
So could helping someone be considered charity too? So it doesn't have to be money all the time, right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what type of help you're doing, right? So it's a charitable act.
Okay.
But here, when we're talking about charities, it's specifically talking about giving to charity
Yes.
with something with monetary value, right? But you could be helping someone still, if it's not money, you're still helping someone. God
Mm-hmm.
still counts that as a righteous deed, and you're still
Mm-hmm.
getting credit for it.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
reason I'm asking is that we have to be careful all the time because sometimes we are doing something for somebody, and we should always know that God is helping that person, and we are just means to do that, and we should not lecture for them or anything like that. It's just we should be extra careful, like we are with the money, like monetary charities. We should be extra careful with anything we do with for anyone. We should know that we are not doing anything. We're just being
Right.
a means for that.
Exactly.
So I had an off-topic question if
Uh-huh.
yeah. So if you're around, say you're around a group of people, out of, I guess, for circumstances, you work with them, and then they start bad mouthing, someone else that they work with. Um, I mean, like I kind of just, I mean, what I know, I guess what I'm asking is just making sure what we're supposed to do, because I mean, I didn't agree with anything they were saying, and even if parts of it was true about like so and so's work ethic, just bickering. It's so it was just I didn't say anything. I was just listening, and then finally I just kind of walked off, what I did is actually change the subject. I started a completely off topic question, and then they completely forgot about the person. Because I guess part of me like just didn't want to be rude and just like turn like say nothing and just turn my back and like walk away, and I'd be like, man, what's wrong with him? So I changed the subject, which worked, but in the future, how should I? What's the best way to handle situations like that? Because I mean, afterward, just I don't know how.
Well, I mean, if it's a recurring thing, then just always changing the subject might not be a good idea. I mean, if you really feel uncomfortable, I mean, you could
Yeah.
let them know that, it makes you feel uncomfortable. Maybe it's not a good idea.
Okay. Yeah, it's not that often.
Politely, I suppose, I mean, you can let them know. I mean, there's many ways to, remind people without coming off as rude. You know, um,
I guess that's what I was struggling with, because like, how do you just say blunt? I mean, I wanted to say something, but it would have
yeah,
came off really blunt, and but it doesn't happen often. But at the same time, I just
yeah.
making sure I'm not sinning by sitting there and listening to the nonsense, and then I mean, after a few minutes, after not saying anything, I'll change the subject. God willing, I do make it a point not to um, associate or come close. Uh,
If I could say something, Brother John, if I understand the definition of oppression, like would that be what was going on in your example? Someone was being oppressed.
yeah, I mean, the person wasn't there, but it was just, I guess you could say it was a form
Oh,
of,
the person wasn't there, but they were talking about them.
yeah, this person wasn't here to defend himself. And I mean, even if this
Uh,
person, what they were talking about was like guilty of this and that, like part of it, I was like, man, are these people backbiting? I just, to be on the safe side, that's why I changed the subject, just to, not want to be associated with anything and just kind of not be attached to these people or anything that they're spouting.
Yes, brother John. I think that was a question for ChatGPT. So I asked ChatGPT and she gave an answer. So I posted it in the chat for you.
That's pretty
How
funny.
to politely, tell your coworkers not to backbite. So
Mashallah. That's pretty awesome.
One of the things that I think could be done would be to, for the person to just leave that place, that room, when they are talking about their backbiting. I think if you strictly and clearly show your position, then others need to respect your decision. I mean, it doesn't matter what they think of you. In the end, then it's God who will decide the fate for the people. But we are like we have our orders, our commandments. We should not sit with these wicked people, when they are doing that. Especially backbiting. I mean, it happens a lot, and then they sometimes they invite you. They just want to say something to also include you in the process of the backbiting. But then, I think one of the techniques would be to just like completely ignore them, not to engage with what they're saying. Or if they want to engage you, just like leave that place. I mean, then they might think that it's rude, but it's be it as it may. Doesn't matter what they think or how they take it. We shouldn't sit with them, and we have to make it clear. We have to tell them that I am offended by what you're doing.
well, okay, so I think ChatGPT. Well, I mean, the response I got, I think it's also like one. So there's three things you can do, right? Either you can just ignore, and that's rude, right? Or you can just be rude and say I'm offended. That's also rude, because just by saying that you're offended, it's not, they don't know why you're offended, right? Because they're not attacking you. So the third way is to have a discussion about it, right? And so I think that's why I asked ChatGPT. Well, I put in this question, and so it gives you some very good alternatives on how to approach the subject, right? So it gave me like 9 or 10 pointers. And so one, it says choose the right time and place to have that conversation. and it says it's important to maintain confidentiality and avoid embarrassing anyone in front of others. So if someone said something, it may be out of concern. There could be many reasons, right? And so at that point, if you just kind of make it turn into a spectacle, the person who has said it obviously might end up being embarrassed, right? So you can have a private conversation with that person, and then also instead of like saying to the whole group, you can find a time and place and remind the person in private, right? That's one thing. Then it also says to start with a positive tone, so expressing your appreciation for your coworkers or whoever that might be, and about the positive aspects of your work environment, to set a friendly tone, and start using I statements, like to avoid sounding accusatory, right? You by saying, instead of saying like, I noticed that you have been doing engaging in discussions, say sometimes I noticed that we have been engaging in discussions, right? To set the tone. And so these kind of things are important, sharing. It says, highlight the impact, so emphasize on the importance of maintaining supportive and respectful atmosphere, right? Sharing personal values, discuss your personal beliefs about teamwork, professionalism, and fairness. Let people know that you prefer to focus on constructive conversations and avoid negative gossip. You suggest to them an alternative approach. Offer an alternative way to deal with any concerns and conflicts. Encourage open communication where coworkers can address issues directly to each other, or involve supervisors if necessary. Lead by example. Be conscious of your own behavior. Ensure that you avoid participating in any backbiting or negative gossip. Show through your actions that you value respectful communication and professionalism. All right. Encourage a supportive culture. Suggest activities or initiatives that can foster a positive work culture, such as team building events, group problem solving session. Right. I mean, it's no longer a religious question, but my whole point is there are ways to address these types of situations in a polite and professional manner. You don't have to, just be so blunt about it. There's ways you can be polite and professional, and still address the situation, and not come off rude, right? If you just get up and leave, I mean, that could be a measure for extreme situations where, let's say, you're reminded or done your part, and letting the person know that what they're doing is wrong and they don't care, right? And you can just get up and leave. Like, I see get up and leave as like used for more extreme circumstances where people are making fun of God and things like that. But if someone's talking about a situation they're in, there could be many aspects to it, right? So we have to approach it in the best way. I mean, I think we have to be careful about things like that also, because when they know we're submitters, and we're trying to be inviting, and trying to set a good example, then I think we should be careful about these things also, right? So we should try to, like, not come off rude or disrespectful in any way also. So maybe using these types of ideas probably will help in getting the job done without causing any kind of unpleasantness in your workplace.
Mashallah, that's a good point, because that's actually what I was doing in the beginning. I was actually starting or not compliment, but just I actually said, "Oh, this so and so, he's not that bad. He does this good or this," and But one of them was actually kind of receptive, and I talked to him kind of in private after, and I said, I don't just basically held a discussion with him about it, and I could see after talking with him just the points I'm bringing up. I think he knows now. Like, it was really subtle, but he knows now, because immediately he actually what he was like downplaying like about how he didn't like this person. He acted like he almost didn't even not like him anymore. That he was just talking about. Like, and I don't know if it was to accommodate me or maybe he just changed his point of view. But yeah, that's yeah, because that makes sense. Mashallah.
When things like this actually happen to me in office, I'm reminded of the movie Matrix. We have watched the movie, all of us, I guess, and we know about Agent Smith. Like this person, this agent can get into any person, and you see a peaceful office. Everybody is like minding their own business, and then all of a sudden, something sparks. A topic comes up and everybody like is like they're possessed. They start talking over and over like about a certain person, and what I have is like they start killing that person in the office without him or her being present. And what I have found, and seeking refuge in God, saying Rabbi Audu, and when you don't have to participate, they want to get you into the game, they want you to be engaged, but they might even address you, but God gives us the strength to just ignore them, and kindly, not we are not showing like making faces or anything like that, because as submitters we have to set a good example. We can just be engaged in our like our tasks, what we are doing, like okay, I'm here but I'm not participating in that. And then mashallah, I've seen that it's like a fire, it gets extinguished. It's like they're all quiet, like all of a sudden everything is fixed. Like they just want you to, Satan wants us to be engaged in that conversation, but God protects us by giving us the strength to just not be a part of that. And in the case of like somebody blaspheming against God, yes, of course, we should remind them or leave again, without making faces or stuff like that. We should be very careful, inshallah, without compromising. Not fighting and not compromising, inshallah. Keeping a balance by seeking refuge in God, inshallah.
Brother Nizam, we can. Do you want to ask your question now? We couldn't hear you before. You're still on mute, by the way. If you do want to ask your question. Okay. Well, I guess probably sleeping. Just kidding. All right. Okay. So yeah, we have some silent listeners today. Yeah, brother Salami, are you able to talk? Okay.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Yes. Do you have any comments?
No.
No.
Thank you for the study, mashallah. I
Mashallah.
listen.
Mashallah. Good.
Mashallah, brother Omi, how are you doing? Do you have any comments, mashallah?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Sorry, I think it's like 20 minutes. I found the internet to connect to the session. I couldn't listen to the whole session, but I was like, I could hear the comments. No, thank you so much, and hopefully I can continue watching it on YouTube to
inshallah.
see.
Inshallah.
Yeah,
We can
thank you,
also
mashallah.
recite Al-Fatiha for Huda. She's recovering from a cold or something.
Okay.
And so inshallah she has a speedy recovery.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
You go ahead. We follow
Okay,
you.
Fatir. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Right.
MashaAllah.
MashaAllah.
Okay. All right. So, any other comments or questions from anyone? All right. So, I guess so. Thank you all for joining. God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. And God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum. We never talked about the Eid. Everybody's celebrating Eid.
Oh, okay. No, we're not celebrating that.
Thank God.
Thank God. MashaAllah.
Alhamdulillah. All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.